Good morning. When Dan asked me at the first of last week, before I had laryngitis, to speak on stewardship this morning, that was kind of a thought stopper. I don't think I've ever spoken on stewardship before in a church. I might have been more comfortable speaking on Reformation Sunday. I even had some thought about, wouldn't it have been fun to gather this group of people whom I know so well, and for us to come together with 99 things that we might put on the door here of our church, our concerns. But his invitation for me to come before us this morning made me think a lot about that word steward and stewardship, which might be hard to understand for children. And so I go back to a Bible dictionary which speaks about being a steward, which is really a very integral part of what it means to follow Christ. The most common word in the New Testament for a steward is one who rules or sets the rules for the household. And we might sit and say, well, that's Dan and that's the session. But we must read further and see that stewardship is not for those, but for everyone who's a part of our community. And stewardship is not limited to money or material goods, and that's not what I'm about to talk about this morning. Stewardship involves everything that God has provided us. Our ability, our talents, our time, our emotions, even life itself. For the law tells us that the earth is the Lord's, and we are placed in it as his stewards. When Helen was talking this morning about the church, I couldn't help but think what we've all done with children before, saying this is the church, and this is the steeple. We open the doors, and here are all the people. And so we are here together as God's people. When I look out and think about the people and what it means to really give time and talent in the church, I immediately began to think of so many of you. I can think of, first of all, the choir that is behind us and the hours that they give in preparation for worship, and that most of them are volunteers and give so lovingly of their time, and the way in which they invited my husband in the last year of his life to come and join him in what was really an extraordinary time. So I say that to you, you can join them at any age. We have one from the high school age, and my husband was sitting among them at age 82, and I believe there's one who may be a bit older than that. But they sound wonderful. Many members of our church who are sitting over to my right were brought here this morning on the church bus, which was certainly a recent purchase that was much needed to bring members here from Westminster Towers. And it depends on volunteers who drive that bus. And I'm understanding too that a volunteer could very well be available for them to go to someone who's not there at the towers but is picked up at another spot. Last week the bus was completely filled. There were no more seats for anyone else to get on the bus, and that's a wonderful news. We know that it's been a very important part of the prime timers gatherings too, as they have gone places, and we have much to give thanks for those who dedicate themselves to that. But it also hasn't been our older people, our younger people, some of them who are here and some of them who are in Fellowship Hall. And we may have missed in lighting the candles this morning, but I was told by one of them, we're just really stressed out getting ready for the dinner later. So you must know that they're looking forward to this time, but they've been busy at work in other ways. All of us have been appreciative of the church directory that was literally a labor of love for one who sits back in the back of our church, but he also engaged others in the process. But it would not have happened without John Franklin and his many hours with that. Our flowers that are on the communion table or sometimes around the front of our church are not ordered from a florist in town, but are prepared by various members of our church. I see Evie, and also I think I saw Eleanor Hummert back here, and Carol Bookhart is probably somewhere else, and I know John has prepared flowers that are so much a part of our worship. I don't have time to go throughout this congregation and speaking about all that are here, but some of our young people, Jonathan, who went out with the children, and Thomas also, they gather here in the sanctuary after worship, and they help clean up things from the pews and feel very, very much a part of the church as their parents have encouraged them to become involved, and we want to give thanks for that. On November 11th, there will be work day at the church where we will gather. There'll be tree trimmers, there will be people here in the sanctuary working with communion trays, lunch downstairs, and it will be a time of fellowship, but also doing much in the church. There are many, though, in the church who, as we see ourselves aging and saying, I can't do those things anymore. That's not, I've done that, been there, done that. And yet I know that there are many, many ways in which each of you not only are engaging within our community, within our church, and wider world. And yet, stewardship is a time when we sometimes come and we assess not only our financial giving, but also the giving of our time. Maybe I give my time, talent, and abilities in a different way than I used to. I would like to challenge you to think carefully about this in one part of our worship service that comes after the reading of Scripture and after the sermon, when we have our elders or our ushers come forward and who move out through the congregation for our offering. We talk about that being an offering, and I think oftentimes think of it as the time to give our financial gifts. And as the plates are passed, they are passed, or people will say, we give in very different ways than we may have given 20 years ago or longer. We're not paid on a weekly basis. We are not oftentimes with children saying, budget part of your time and give some of your money as it comes down the aisle. Some people do that, but others are saying, I give online. I give in other ways. But I would like to challenge you to also know that there is in your pews another piece, and I did bring it up here, but here it is. If you will look in your pews, there's also a prayer card. Downstairs in the office, there is a list of people for whom we are praying who are not here with us. And I know some of you came to worship this morning carrying up the names and the images of others on your mind and your heart. This is a time during offering where you can pull that card and share your concern. It may be for an individual, it may be for a worldwide concern that you have brought with you to worship. And then those things are collected in worship and are shared with elders who will be in prayer after the service. But it also may be one way in which you say to yourself, as I leave here, as I go out to my home or into the wider community, these are some concerns that I carry with me. And I want to, as I go forward, do some concrete things. Maybe you are a letter writer or a card writer or something like that. How many of us have been the recipients of birthday cards from Joan Lamosi? Ever gotten one of those? This is a woman I never knew. She's not here with us on Sunday morning. She's no longer able to come and worship with us. She's in a nursing home out in Oviedo. But she continues to connect with us by sending us cards on our birthdays. And not only just a card, she's created this on her computer in her room and will have a note or something about what she's been doing this week. Within this group before me, many of you have all kinds of talents. And I am not very good at card giving, but I'm one of those who's been very blessed by those who have sent me cards at very special times of my life. And there may be other ways, with a phone call. I remember one friend who lived to be 103, and she said, "Carolyn, do you know what it means to when you're living by yourself, to have someone lift up the phone and say, 'Would you like to have a prayer with me before you go to bed tonight?'" When I thought about stewardship, the words of a folk hymn kind of rang in my mind as I thought about it, and it's something that I would like to conclude with. The words of it go, "I'm going to live so God can use me. Anytime, anywhere." What does that mean for you? Where would that be? Could you repeat that after me? I'm going to live so God can use me. Anytime, anywhere.